Welcome to the 11 Warriors show for Thursday, April 25th, 2024. I'm Jason Priestess, that's Chris Lauterbach, and that's Ramzy Nasrallah of 11 Warriors. Gentlemen, how are you this morning?
It's draft day. Draft miss.
It is draft miss, man. Like a whole lot of dudes, recruiting's a big deal in college, but I feel like the NFL draft is bigger for NFL fans, if that can be possible.
The NFL draft is like the best 4-day season of any sport in America. It's unbelievable. You talk about the draft all the time, and then like these 4 days, especially the first 2 days, like tonight and tomorrow, just phenomenal work by them. I mean, do you remember the last baseball draft you paid attention to?
No.
I mean, Jason remembers hockey drafts because Jason.
My team's picking high. That's why I always remember hockey drafts. my favorite team usually gets a top 10 pick.
After they get jobbed out of whatever the highest possible.
Yeah, they should fall to 7. They should
Sets
get one.
the tone for the draft pick they're going to make.
Yeah, the Blue Jackets are really good at drafting high.
The NFL cooks. They're so good at this.
They are, man. It's in the Detroit this year, and saw some photos already of like what they've been building downtown, and it's going to be a nice party for the city. And Detroit fans have a little something to kind of go into the season with some little excitement, maybe for the first time in probably 3 decades. So
they barked a Super Bowl opportunity. They just absolutely gave it away. We should mention that in case there are Michigan fans listening in. Like, can you believe how badly Detroit choked that? That's worse than anything Ohio State's done in the last 30 years.
By far, completely choked. I'd have to stop being a Detroit fan. Other quick news: Reggie Bush getting his Heisman back. You guys saw that? Probably fine. Whatever. I don't have a strong opinion on that in the days of NIL, but you know what that leads to in the mind of every Ohio State fan on the planet. It's
TP and the 2010 Buckeyes time to shine. Unvacate.
Put that win back on the books against Arkansas. Put those wins from that season on the books. Because I think that gave Notre Dame a little bit of a breathing room in the win percentage and win number. But you add those back, and we're in business again. But by all means, if I'm an Ohio State fan, if I'm a player from those 2010 teams, or Posey, those guys, I want that back. They deserve it back. I don't think at this point in time there's a whole lot. I don't know how soon it'll happen, but I can see it being awarded to them again. Can you guys also see that, or is the NCAA just going to dig their heels in and say, well, rules were rules?
Well, I think Reggie Bush was the steepest hill to climb for saying, well, it's a different environment now. And what Reggie Bush, I think his family got a house in San Diego. Mm-hmm. It wasn't quite, selling trinkets and socks for a wad of money of sweaty tattoo cash, but I think that you'll start to see where there were enticements or it's really around name, image, and likeness type of stuff. Mm-hmm. Fixing grades or whatever, that's not going to come off the board. But not only do I think that the 2010 Buckeyes should get their wins back, I think that Ed Rife and the Tattoo Syndicate should give back his Sugar Bowl trophy, his Fiesta Bowl, Timex watch, all the different swag stuff that they got that he sold to get extra ink. Like, the whole thing needs to be refunded.
It's worth pointing out, like, USC still has wins vacated from Bush. He's just getting his trophy back, but it's the first step. So speaking of some new normal type stuff, Roddy Gale lands at Michigan. And, they're obviously getting a pretty good shooter, 13.5 a game, 30 minutes a night, almost 5 boards a night. But this was like, this is blasphemous, because you can't go to your rival and just hop over and think it's no big deal. And my mind still operates like that. But is that going to change? Like, Alford went to Michigan, as a running backs coach in March. And, you're seeing some of the stuff happen that you probably never thought you'd see. But in the era of the portal, Chris, should we open our minds a little bit? Is this something that, like, hey, every few years, one of your players may go to your rival?
I think there's obviously going to be a greater chance for it, but I think comparing Roddy in OSU, Michigan, and hoops, right, to me, that's what's blasphemous, is acting like that's even in the same stratosphere as Ohio State, Michigan, and football. Yeah, it's a rivalry, but only because of the tentacles of football just kind of reaching over into it is another thing to be proud of or crack on if you win that game. So obviously it doesn't happen very often in the past. I think you could potentially see more of it in the future in basketball. But I don't know. I still don't think we're going to see a ton of that in football because I don't even think Ohio State, Michigan in hoops is 10% the rivalry of what Ohio State, Michigan in football is.
That's fair, but you can't foresee football players flipping here in the next 10 years back and forth.
Not on some wide scale. I don't see that on a wide scale. It might take exactly what you just said, where there's kind of like a position coach domino or something like that. Like if that happened, because guys are loyal, loyal to that. So I wouldn't say it would never happen, but I don't know. I think it'll still be fairly scarce in football, and that this basketball example of Roddy going to Michigan is really irrelevant to that argument in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, when Bourne came to Ohio State from Michigan, it was like shockwaves, man. It was a big deal. Like, we're like, wow, has this ever happened before? And you read this week, you got Gale going, granted it's basketball, but then wide receiver Kyle Ford is transferring back to USC after spending 1 year at UCLA. So, like, it's clearly like, I think the transfer portal is opening some of this up. And, college football fans, I think in the last 5 to 6 years, have to adapt. You have to have the mindset almost of like, I can't be shocked by anything that happens, because like, who saw USC and UCLA in the Big Ten? Who saw NIL quickly becoming what it became, or unlimited transfers, or some of the other stuff we've seen? Yeah. So I don't know. I guess for me, I'm kind of like just getting my brain prepped that, there could be a dude that he's really good for Ohio State and Michigan comes up with a bag and all of a sudden he's playing for Michigan the next season and it's going to suck.
You're approaching it from a 30,000 foot view of Ohio State and Michigan, and people guys going back and forth. But all of the examples that you named, there's some pretty important subtext and context. Like Justin Bourne grew up in a Michigan house. Mike Bourne played for Bo Schembechler. Lloyd Carr was like, he was going to play for him. As a fifth grader, he was going to go to Michigan. And when Lloyd Carr retired and Rich Rodriguez came in, it was a new Michigan, and it was completely incompatible with what the entire Bourne family had expected. So it wasn't just Justin Bourne flipping. It was Jacoby. It was all the Bournes, including Mike, becoming Ohio State people. With Roddy Gale, it's, his coach was fired finally. Michigan's terrible coach was fired finally. It was not the Michigan he had been playing against. It kind of seems like a new Michigan, right? It's Dusty May's Michigan, and he's now playing for one of the assistants on the second assistant who's been on two staffs where the head coach got fired. So it kind of blurs it a bit. And even with like UCLA, the kid going from Kyle Ford going from USC to UCLA, his coach is now Ohio State's offensive coordinator. It's a different UCLA, and Alex Grinch is no longer at USC. They've been, I know he plays on offense, but there's been a bit of reupholstering there. I imagine that he sees USC a little bit differently. So while three old guys can look and be like, oh, UCLA, USC, fluidity, and Ohio State, Michigan, yeah, on the surface that's kind of messed up. But there was no scenario. The wildest ones would be like when Al Washington and Greg Madison jumped over from Harbaugh to coach against Harbaugh at Ohio State when Urban flipped over to Ryan Day. That one is probably the least amount of subtext. They just got out, right? Like Madison was in retirement age, and Washington had left Columbus to play at Boston College. He was going to Ohio State for the first time ever. That was probably the biggest scandal of everything that we've talked about here. As for Alford, I think during contract season, he was kind of told to exit. I just didn't think he would go to Michigan. There's a bit of spite to that. And you know what? Good. Maybe their running backs can be underwhelming now.
A little more juice for that game in November for sure. I don't know, man. I'm still like, keeping my mind open to, hey, this is going to have an effect on rivalries. There's a lot more guys moving around. Let's talk about some of the portal stuff too, because we were talking recently on the show about how hyped this portal window was becoming by people ahead of time. And Chris, you found some good stats from Max Olson at the Athletic, and 497 as of Monday or Tuesday players in the portal this year. That's up 47% from last year. 25%, this is my favorite, are just repeat transfers. They're like, I need to do it again, man. I just, 20% are grad transfers. I get those. And then defensive linemen and defensive backs led the way in the most by position. And then this is, I think, most interesting too, is that only 10% or so have found destinations. So there's like a whole lot of people with not a lot of time left now to kind of find a new home. And up 47% in 1 year. What's it going to be up next year? What's it going to be in 2 years, in 3 years? Like, I really am a little concerned that some of these kids and young men that go play for Ohio State, Michigan, or UCLA and USC kind of diminish the rivalry a little bit by jumping.
I think it diminishes the first month of the season when you're like, oh, where did these guys play last year? By the time you get to, that's the thing about Ohio State, Michigan, on the long list of things that are great about that game. As long as they don't mess with that, it's the last one. It's the last one on the schedule. They've played a whole season by the time they see each other. You're getting the most weathered, seasoned version of each other to play there. And by the time Ohio State hosts Michigan, Quinshon Judkins playing at Ole Miss, distant memory. Ditto Caleb Downs. Ditto all the transfers that Michigan got and the ones that Ohio State has picked up over the offseason. If it was the first game of the season, that would be weird. Yeah,
I want to believe you. I really do. But like the old basketball heads like cry about the young guys being buddy with each other, and they're like Blaine Beer and Jordan, would fight every night, and they don't have that anymore. Do you have some of that, Chris, with hey man, I know some guys on the other sideline now. I know them pretty well all of a sudden. And in this case, it'd be basketball with Roddy, but down the road, you could know a guy really well. It could be a good friend of yours, on the other team. Does that hurt some of the hate factor?
I don't think it does. I think in some ways it can enhance it. Maybe not at that player level, but for the fan level, I think it can, it only adds fuel. If you just take that Roddy example, like if Ohio State, Michigan and hoops really was a rivalry and both teams were good all the time, gosh, that would sting a hell of a lot more than he left, and you'd want to beat his brains in a lot more. Right now, it's just kind of like, well, we'll see what most fans like. Well, let's just see what happens. I mean, hell, even in the program, sometimes I'm not sure how serious they are. So I think that it is interesting that we're seeing it happen, and I appreciate all of your concern around it. I do, but even these days, these kids before they get to whatever college they go to, even if they transfer, they're at all these different camps. I mean, they all feel like a lot of them know each other, especially in certain position groups or wide receiver versus DB, that kind of thing, because they're all in all these all-star teams and camps or whatever. They at least know each other. And social media brings everybody so much closer. There's a lot of that goes on. So I think that, maybe from a player standpoint, it is more like NFL or NBA where people can be buddy, but still, want to win on Saturday. And I don't think it compromises the competition. Not that you're saying that. I think teams, players still want to do well and want their team to win. And from a fan perspective, I hadn't really thought about it till you were breaking it down, but gosh, I think that kind of stuff can fuel it. I mean, the boring stuff was not irrelevant, right? Like it just threw a little bit more gasoline on the situation. It was another huge storyline for that year's game kind of thing. So if we get a few of those, you don't want to lose to, don't want to lose to that guy, but I think the lead up to it is just going to build up more intensity in the rivalries.
They're also from Columbus. I don't know where is Gale from New York? I can't remember.
Yeah, he's from New York State.
Yeah. So I mean, a kid leaving a Michigan legacy going to Ohio State when he's from Columbus is also it's got some asterisk stuff to it, right? I mean, going home.
Yeah, fair points. And just more fuel to that Dusty May, Jake Diebler comparison that will be made by fans of both fan bases. That's over the next 3 to 5 years to see what happens. And Chris, I know you say it's not a big rivalry in hoops and, for various factors, but still can imagine the faithful and the shot booing every time Roddy touches the ball.
Oh, 100%.
That'll be exciting. I'll be there for that.
Yeah, he could have transferred to Northwestern and that would have happened though, right? I just think that's just the nature of the beast. And I'm not trying to say it's not a rivalry, but it's obviously not in the same stratosphere as Ohio State, Michigan in football. I mean, for me, honestly, I know Ramzy, you went to Indiana, but to me, I'm more interested in beating Indiana every year, even than Michigan in basketball, personally.
It's a bigger rivalry for sure, especially not to date us, but like you're talking about transfers going back and forth. I've watched Lawrence Funderburk play for both programs.
Oh, wow. How big of a deal was that too? That was huge news.
It was a big deal. And it was also when Knight was losing, like, Lawrence Funderburk, outspoken type of guys who weren't exactly inclined to fit into a system and set picks and occasionally take, jump shots.
Punch to the face. Oh, jump shots.
That too.
Moving on. NFL draft is tonight. Touched on it a minute ago. 8 p.m. in Detroit. Things get started. I think it's on like 300 channels. I saw ESPN, NFL. They're all broadcasting it. Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously the big fish for Ohio State, expected to go right now around number 4 to Arizona. That's where a lot of people have him going.
Gross.
Yeah. And then, Paris Johnson, but other than that, man, it's a tough spot. fun piece this week from Dan Hope and some other people at 11 Warriors ranking Marvin among the top 10 wide receivers in OSU history. Here's the top 10 that they came up with. And this is a combination of staff voting and reader voting. Marvin, number 1, David Boston, 2, Chris Carter, Chris Olave, Terry Glenn, 5, Ted Ginn Jr., JSN, Garrett Wilson, Joey Galloway, Michael Jenkins to round out the top 10. That's a pretty good list. That's, man, talk about spoiled. But some things have jumped out at me. Like, my first instinct is to be like, no, Chris Carter is the best to ever play wide receiver here. And I still probably think that. But do you ding him for not completing his eligibility here, for missing an entire season for the agent thing? Does that hurt him compared to Marv, compared to Boston, some of these other guys on there?
I can't believe we've gotten so conditioned to losing big games as a fan base that Marvin Harrison Jr. is the number 1 receiver of all time. Like, what was the big game that Marvin Harrison Jr. helped Ohio State win? It wasn't the Rose Bowl. That was Stroud and JSN. He would have finished in the top
Georgia.
3.
Marv had 3 TDs, and Chris has got a good point about
But
Georgia.
he was not the MVP, and it was another receiver was the MVP of that game, and the quarterback would have been next. It could have been Georgia, but it wasn't. It wasn't any of the Michigan games. It wasn't any of the Penn State games. There's no signature game or any Marv who willed Ohio State to this level of arrogance where they could win any game. The arrogance that Michigan has now. This is a lost era for Ohio State alphas, and Marvin Harrison's the poster child of it. I think he's generational talent, but that if you're going to start giving weights and scores when you're going through the names that you listed, Jason, Michael Jenkins is not 10th. He's in the top 3 just on account of what he helped deliver as an Ohio State receiver. And by the way, had a pretty good pro career too. Chris Olave helped deliver a punch in the mouth to a favored Michigan team in that game. Like, a lot of those guys you're going through those names, they have signature games and signature moments and moments of consequence. Marv caught a lot of badly thrown Kyle McCord balls and some really well thrown CJ Stroud balls. And what did they win, man? They went 0 for 9 in goals when he was there. They won a Rose Bowl that they could have won without him.
Yeah, I buy into a lot of that. I think at least one of those years he doesn't play defense. I think there's only so much you can do. To me, Chris Carter's number 1 is still number 1, and I don't know what Ohio State won when he was there, and he did whatever. He's also in the NFL Hall of Fame
every year.
Yeah, yeah. But
and had four targets every Saturday.
Yeah,
the defenses were do we cover Mike Lanise or Brian Staveline or Chris Carter?
Yeah, I put that at Earl's feet, not at Chris Carter. So I hear what you're saying. You want big guy, big time players to show up in big time game. Like, I buy into that for sure. I think Carter had some big. They were second tier bowl games because Ohio State was, frankly, second tier back then. But Chris Carter's number 1 for me. I had Boston number 2, and then I had Marvin number 3.
And probably Boston 1, Olave 2, Jenkins 3.
Jenkins was way too far down. I will say that, because he had a 1,000-yard season in an offense that didn't really like to throw it, and then I think he had 970 the next year. I don't think he was too far away from a grand. He could have been he had a legit shot at being the first 2-time 1,000-yard receiver at Ohio State at a time where they didn't throw it much and they didn't have a good quarterback.
They lose 3 games in 2002 without him.
Yeah. Purdue game alone, just money. We're this is interesting too, because we probably been fans for maybe 25% of Ohio State football history. Probably, if you do the math, I think they're around season.
Why the hell would you say that, man?
Is that a badge of honor or start writing our eulogy?
Yeah, both, man. Their season, they're probably 130.
We have an announcement. Well, none of us are surviving this episode.
So it's sad but true. But my point is, one time when we were younger in the early 90s, Joey Galloway was the second best wide receiver to ever come through here behind Chris Carter. And look at the guys, and this is just since the 90s that have popped on this list, and I know the game is more passing focused, than ever, and will continue to probably trend that way for a while. But that says a lot to me. And a lot of these guys in the top 10 here are guys in the last decade, even guys in the last 15 years. It's kind of insane what Ohio State's done with the position and how a lot of it's been recent.
It's a juiced ball era for receivers for sure.
Some good dudes. Back to the draft. Top 5 projected. Bears at number 1. They cut our dude Justin Fields loose and sent him to Pittsburgh.
Steelers.
And they have their eyes on Caleb Williams, who I will hate Caleb Williams forever. I do. I don't like the guy. He said so many insanely just dumb things and rude things and cocky things. And the fingernail painting where he had F Utah on his fingernails ahead of that Pac-12 championship game. There's like 10 things like that. So I think he's like a Kyler dude. I think he's maybe talented, shorter in stature, and he's going to have something in his contract that says he can't play Call of Duty for more than X hours a day, because I don't know that he's mature enough to take an NFL team to where they need to go. So Bears, good luck. I know you've struggled with this position for eternity. But, you got two guys coming in behind him. A lot of folks have Jaden Daniels of LSU going to the Commanders at 2. And then the Patriots getting Drake May of North Carolina at 3. Again, Marv potentially 4. And then Malik Neighbors, the wide receiver at LSU, going number 5. Or even maybe J.J. McCarthy, who's honestly surprised me, the kind of draft love he's getting right now. It's the opposite of what C.J. Stroud got last year, where CJ had all the tape and people were like, oh, I don't know, he's not a good quarterback. And McCarthy has no tape and they're like, man, he might be the next Joe Montana. So I can't figure any of this stuff out. Like, can you guys help?
They love Moxie. I think
they do.
Same thing with Neighbors. He's got dog in him. I think Caleb Williams is going to be like, not Johnny football bad, but like it's going to flame out a bit, especially when you see Fields in a winning situation, in a winning franchise with a coach that knows how to manage for a decade, not for like a year and a half. We have to win right now, which is what the Bears are like now. I think I'm sorry if Dan Hope's listening, but I don't want the Patriots to get Drake May. I think he's going to be really good. Daniels has been playing for so long. Like, of course he's going to be better than college kids. Like this, it's so silly. I just don't know. And once you get to the NFL, everyone's old. So it's May as atop the list for quarterbacks. I think Neighbors will be good.
I do too. I think Stetson Bennett, on your old thing, he found out quickly that being like 3 years older than everyone didn't work in the NFL. So Stetson was an old ass man. Some good names in there, man. Like, I mean, Chris, of those 3 quarterbacks, if you have to take one as a GM, who are you taking first?
I'd probably take May first, but I don't feel great about any of them. I think all of it's a big reach because of the position they play and the jockeying for position. Once one goes, the second one has to go, kind of thing. Like, there's always a run on them once one happens. But I also know that people that really scout this and get paid to do nothing but figure this out screw it up at that position every single year. Like, it is just the most inexact science, and it's obviously the most difficult position to play in sports. So yeah, who the hell knows?
Some other Buckeyes, obviously in the draft, Marv will go first round, but Mike Hall's got a chance to go second round, and some folks have him maybe going to the Browns. Ramzy, you're a diehard Browns fan. Are you into that?
I'm a Browns fan because I couldn't choose where I'm from, so they disgust me. I hope they get him. I need more reasons to enjoy the Browns. They're going to be absolutely loaded this year, outside of the sex pest, fragile quarterback that they have who can't function when it's below 70 degrees outside. It's cold in Cleveland.
I saw he was running PR for Saudi Arabia earlier.
God, it's just
Did you guys catch that? It's like, dude, what are you doing? Do you have any advisors anywhere?
I saw that tweet, and then I'm like, you know what? This is all about the engagement. So I looked at the mentions, and it only took like 2 to get to. Like, did you get any rub and tugs while you were in Riyadh?
I didn't know where that was going, that way or beheadings. Like, it could go either way. Like,
it could go either way.
Saws, there's a lot of stuff in play, right? When you get with those two.
I mean, God, it's just gross. And by the way, their first round picks. You're talking about the Browns, then get him in the second round. You know who's getting the first round pick?
I do.
It's still the Texans, who also got the NFL offensive and defensive rookies of the year last year, thanks in part to the Browns draft picks that they spent to get Deshaun Watson to come to Cleveland and not play.
I'm not a diehard Browns fan. I'll admit that, but I feel for Browns fans. I do feel for Browns fans because
I used to.
You won't find a more
Baker.
Well,
and I thought they were going to win it all. I mean, maybe not you, Ramsey, but a huge chunk got real cocky real quick. And
what about that draft in New York City when they took Johnny and the Browns fans are up in the crowd? It's you won't find more diehard fans anywhere on earth than Browns fans, and they deserve something nice. And every time they try to get close to nice, they get kicked in the balls. Like the whole Deshaun thing. Like, they got a really nice team outside of Deshaun, and granted, Deshaun could be a good quarterback again, but like
Super Bowl defense.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah, legit team. They got stars. They got one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. They had the best running back in the NFL, in my opinion, who always
His leg fell off last year.
Yeah, but great dudes. But yeah, it deserves something nice. Tight end Cade Stover, 3rd round projection. Some people have him go to the Bengals. That would be a lot of fun because he can catch. I think we can all agree he can catch. If we're critiquing Cade's
No argument.
game, yeah, the Duke can catch footballs, and there's a guy down there that can throw balls.
He can't catch a rusher. We know that.
Not gotta work on blocking a little bit, but Tommy Eichenberg in the 4th, Josh Proctor in the 5th, Steel Chambers in the 7th. Xavier Johnson would be a fun one in the 7th, a guy that came from walk-on to Scully, and made some really big plays for Ohio State when he got a chance to. So it'd be fun to see him go. And you got Matt Jones and Mayan Williams, 2 guys that maybe aren't projected to be drafted, but maybe undrafted free agent signings on Sunday when those all come in. Other than Marv, who do you guys like to have the longest NFL career out of that batch?
Out of just who we talked about.
Yeah. Other than Marv, which Buckeye?
If Matt Jones can find a good right guard situation between a seasoned veteran center and a right tackle, and we're talking about a right-handed quarterback on that team, I think he can play a decade.
That's an interesting one because I think, potentially as an undrafted or very, very late, it does feel like he's got a skill set for sure. I think Mike Hall will be the first one off the board after Marv. I definitely feel like Mike Hall showed some really nice flashes. He'd never really sustained, and we'll see how that goes. But I feel like he's the most talented guy in the draft besides Harrison from Ohio State. So I'd probably go him. But I've still got some sleeper. Maybe it's just blind love because I thought he was going to be so good out of the gate. But I just feel like Josh Proctor has the build. He's got the physicality. I don't know. Maybe he could put it together and hang around for a while as a late rounder.
Yeah, I love him. I love X, but he reminds me of KJ Hill in the NFL. He'll get like 3 years and be done. That'd be great. 3 years is good. That's a lot of paychecks.
Tough biz, man. It's funny, Chris. Do you see Mike Hall becoming like almost like a Draymond Jones guy that gets on somewhere and just puts in a really, really good career that maybe a lot of people didn't project for the NFL for the guy?
I don't see that high of a ceiling. Maybe I think Draymond's pretty damn good, but I do think Hall could be a player. And I think in the NFL where they're maybe not just rotation but very specialized in when you're on the field and that kind of thing based on down distance situation, that kind of stuff, might be in a situation where he could flourish because he definitely has the he's got the physical tools for sure. And I think now that you're getting paid for it, how much, he's got a kid, how much, not that he wasn't serious here, but how much more serious will you be about this when it's all you do is this, right? There's nothing else to pretend that you're doing. You're a football player. I think, there's a chance for him that he could be really good. Draymond, that'd be awesome if he got that high. That's not where I'm at. But again, this stuff's inexact and I won't pretend to watch 100 hours of NFL football every Sunday either.
You're not catching Seahawks and Broncos games?
I watch them, but I definitely watch them from a more casual point of view.
We have to shout out Kyle Jones. His favorite Jones is not anyone in his family, but it's Draymond.
Yeah,
absolutely. Tune in tonight. What do you guys think Marv will wear anything outrageous? He likes to wear clothing I didn't know existed, right? You see pictures of him going to the basketball game. Like, I didn't know people wore stuff like that. It's like, this guy's half Hollywood already. Did you know what I'm talking about? Like, I didn't know half the stuff he wears is, I was like, I've never seen anything like that before.
This is like our seventh boomer moment of this episode. Oh, look at the youngsters wearing the colors of the fashion.
That's right.
It's a hard scrabble story of a guy who grew up the son of a millionaire, who then became a millionaire in college, who now tonight gets to become a millionaire for the third time.
Some prop bets. We've had some fun with some of these recently. There's some they put out for the draft. They're going to have both Nick Saban and Bill Belichick on the broadcast. Maybe ESPN or someone will have them. Who cracks a smile first? They got Saban at minus 150 and Belichick at plus 110. So the favorite seems to be Saban here, right?
It is for me. I think he's retired. He's chilling.
Saban laughs
back in the game.
He laughs at stuff that's funny, and the NFL draft broadcasts are just corny and unfunny, and they're meant for the masses. Whereas Belichick laughs at stupid shit. So I think if you look at the environment, I think he's going to be like, "What kind of dumb comment was that?" And he'll get a snicker, and that'll count, and that'll pay.
So you're in on Belichick for the last.
It's
for the
not
first,
ha funny. It's just like he's laughing like you moron.
First
That's
smile.
What's
Okay,
first.
I'm with that. I can get with that. How many dogs will be shown during round one? And this is like, when they go in the guy's house and they have the draft party. You're looking for like a golden retriever in the background or a poodle over in the corner, like, licking itself or something. Like, how many dogs do we get in round one? The over/under is 2.
I'll go under.
I'll go over because you could get the over in one shot.
That's true. Be a big dog family going in the first round, right? These are important things to discuss. I mean, I'm glad that we're doing this show so we can dive into this important in these important prop bets. Last one. Which highlight will ESPN's broadcast show first? Luke May, UNC basketball highlights, or Marvin Harrison Sr. NFL highlights? Marv is senior is at -1,000. Big favorite there. Luke May, North Carolina, plus 550.
It's who gets taken first, right? And right out, it looks like it's Marv.
They might have some build up though, right? They're going to do some.
But they just kind of like a legacy spotlight sort of.
Yeah,
scramble.
what are those? What are those? I'm looking for like a featurette in the industry. I'm not sure what they're called.
I'll lean Harrison Sr. just because he's in Canton, and it's football versus basketball.
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer. I wouldn't bet on it because -1,000 isn't worth the bet. But yeah, I'd be stunned if we saw Luke May, maybe even at all. But definitely, you're going to see Marvin Harrison Sr.
That's a gambling addiction hotline bet. Yeah, I'm not touching it either.
Can you imagine? Like, who are the people that do bet on the number of dogs in the first round? Because I have friends that bet on sports, and you'll bet on some random games, maybe even like a crew game. You're not even a crew fan, hypothetically, but to get really deep and bet on the number of dogs you see in the first round, like
you gotta have like a hunch, an educated guess. Whereas if you're betting on the stuff we just talked about, your entire wardrobe is just barrels with suspenders because you've lost all your clothes.
They should report you to some like list if you make that bet. They're like, hey, we got a hot one. This guy needs help. He's betting on the number of dogs in the first round.
How'd you lose your house? I thought Luke May was going to get highlights during the draft. Oh, well,
it happens.
Yeah,
I will be tuning
You deserve
in.
homelessness.
There's another one. I didn't throw the details down, but it was basically like who gets the first hug from the number one pick, and it was like mom, dad, agent, and then like brother or something. And mom was a clear favorite. Agent was like last, but can you imagine like how cold blooded it would be if the agent gets the first hug? Like if mom and dad are sitting right there. I would be pretty salty as a dad.
Which girlfriend gets memed for the next decade? I still see Russell's Wilson's ex-wife. Detaching her jaw like she's in the second Jurassic Park movie. It's great.
Some alien action. Yeah, I'll tune in for I want to see, Boomer me wants to see Marv wearing some shoes I didn't know could be shoes. And,
Jason in Slack. Hey, did you ever know these shoes existed? What's he wearing? It's like a disco ball.
Yeah. It was like Air Force Ones, old man. What are you doing? Last thing for the show.
Hold on, he just signed with New Balance. So he's going to be wearing New Balances.
He did, yeah. Yeah. I guess he won't be. So definitely wearing New Balance, or is he wearing dress shoes? Want to create our own prop bet on the moment?
We'll be wearing the Bruno Malis in homage to OJ, R.I.P.
Yeah, wow, that's a deep cut right there.
Yeah. It's his Boomer show.
It is a Boomer show. We're talking about OJ. I saw a tweet the other day, not to get too sidetracked. Someone was like, I guess one of the Paul brothers is expecting a baby.
Yeah.
And someone quote tweeted and said, "Welcome back, OJ." It's basically like OJ was being reincarnated. I'm like, damn, that's pretty cold blooded. And I'm going to jump on another tangent because I did see like a forum the other day where they were asking people from around the world, what's the worst insult or curse word you can say in your native language? Because there's cultures like, thousands of years old, and they've got a lot of time to kind of whip up some really cold-blooded stuff. And one of the ones I saw from China was they would tell someone, I bet your family book is only 1 page. And I guess the family book over there lists all your living relatives. Just like, wow, your family book is only 1 page. And, I know one from India, which basically, I think it's Bosriki is how you say it. And it means that your mother had you, gave birth to you out of her butt, basically, which is like a really clever way to kind of approach that.
The shit baby. Nice.
Because you're like, whoa, wow, okay.
I can contribute to this conversation.
I was going to say, you got any for us?
My first language is Arabic. When we were kids, we drove to Disney World, and my parents just started laughing like hysterically, like saying in Arabic, like, I can't believe it. And then like couple miles later, they're like, there it is again. They started laughing. And we're small. My sister never learned to speak like I did. And I figured out why they were laughing. We were seeing signs, exit signs for Kissimmee, Florida. Kissimmee means go fuck your mother in Arabic.
Oh,
so
wow.
they're seeing these huge signs like Kissimmee, 2 miles. Kissimmee, like, and they were howling and like, oh God.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's a good one.
Any Florida listeners, now you know. Kissimmee.
Yeah, a lot of weird looks by tourists down there. A friend of mine's Persian background, and he said this is not an insult, but it's a funny thing where the firstborn boy is called the golden penis.
Because he's Persian,
like the family's awesome. Like the family's hopes and all that. He's like the exalted one, like the golden penis. I'm like, okay, that's pretty good too. If you have any good ones, if you speak another language as a native language, please toss it in the comments. Because I travel. I want to know what I can say when I go
abroad.
Bring
the culture,
right? Next time I go to China, it's going to be, I bet your family book only has 1 page in it. And
then Jason ends up in a Chinese prison.
Bring down the house.
It's just me and Chris doing the show. Where's Jason?
Very distinct chance of that, but I'll get one off before I go, right? G5, man, a little bit of a crossroads for our buddies in the MAC and the Sun Belt and all of these, I don't want to say lesser conferences, but smaller school programs. And latest was Derek Dooley saying that he has some private equity lined up for them, and they might have their own tournament because I think they see the writing on the wall. The Big Ten and the SEC said something the other day, which I thought was super interesting and super intentional, when they said if we didn't get what we wanted in the last CFP negotiation, we were out. We're going to start our own, basically. They didn't say to start their own part, but that's what they meant.
Yeah.
And, if you're an athletic director at Bowling Green, you have to see the writing on the wall right now and maybe understand that, in this current iteration of the playoff, we may have a seat at the table, a small seat,
Yeah.
We're getting like 17%, I think is what their cut is of the pie. SEC and Big Ten get 29% apiece. And like the G5 is like, go split this 17%. So you can see where this is lining up. And of course, if the SEC and the Big Ten get their way, down the road, it's going to be, 40 big teams and 1 big or 2 big leagues fighting for it all. What does the G5 have to do, or where do you guys see it in 10 years, in 20 years?
You end up with tiered leagues. Right now, we just only have it's FBS and FCS, and there needs to be some more delineation there because they're not going to win titles. It's just not going to happen. If they need to get money and build their way up to a scenario where they could earn the right to join a Premier League in the FBS, they would need to get like an incredible first they would need to understand that they're not trying to crown a national champion. That's what happens when you have money and resources and the right to win a national championship. They're trying to win a payday. And the way that you do that is by making this more of a show than a tournament, which means you need like Caesars to sponsor it. You need like MGM to someone to make it just lean into how gambling this has become. All of this stuff is now they're dropping. If you went back to when we were kids, they would never give you the lines on games during the pregame show. You would never see so much gambling iconery like all over the place during our broadcast. But now there's too much money in it to avoid it. And now players are getting paid. And if the G5 wants to elevate its stature, it needs to elevate its finances. And it wants to do that. It needs to lean into gambling and put on a show that doesn't compete with national championships. It's just football on TV that you can bet on. Maybe integrate an app thing into it.
Yeah. And I can see where they're having a tough time hanging on to the fact that they've got that seat at the table now, but the Big Ten SEC is eventually going to push them out of that. So they need to be a little bit more forward thinking, I think, as well. One thing I wouldn't do is private equity, though. I mean, unless they want some programs sold off for parts. I mean, they'll have to disband some programs and sell that private equity firm will have the weight benches on eBay. So I don't think they want to, go that route. But I like what you're saying, Ramzy, as far as trying to infuse some cash another way, because, doing it with a group like that, name me one example that's turned out good for the folks that turned to private equity.
No.
But they're going to have to get real about the tiering, though, because I think they're struggling. And, the other part about that is within the group of 5, there's really 2, the Mountain West and the AAC, I think, that are in a kind of a different stratosphere than the other 3 leagues that make up the group of 5 as far as revenue goes. So they're going to run into the same kind of thing there that, the ACC runs into now, or the Big 12 runs into now, with getting bullied by the SEC and the Big 10. So it's not like the Group of Five are all created equal either. So it's going to be a bit of work. But I think the first thing they got to do is get real about the fact that long term they're not going to have a spot in the CFP.
Yeah, that's a really good point about what private equity does when it doesn't reach its forecast. You see private equity going to a school, taking a piece of the university, and then the football team doesn't produce the revenue they're expecting, and they tell the university, we decided you don't need a business school, so
right.
we're gonna ship that off to the local community college and see if we can't get more out of this asset.
Yeah, I mean the Bowling Green Olive Gardens, things like that are coming to us soon. But to be fair, the private equity component is just for the playoff, their own playoff, and I would keep it as far away from the schools as possible. Honestly, I'd be leery of doing anything that you guys touched on. But I like the gambling idea, and I think that I think they need to lean into it. It's going to become. We talked about transfers earlier. It's going to become a league where guys try to ball out to move up. And you're already seeing some of that. And it's probably historically been a little bit of that in the past too, but maybe more so than ever now with the transfer portal. And they need to embrace that. And it won't quite be like AAA baseball because they'll have more, agency in where they get to go and decide to go and who they want to play for. But I do think they should borrow some stuff from minor league baseball and get weird, have Tuesday night football games. I mean, that's the reason they're trying pro football leagues in the spring, Ramzy, to your earlier point, is because people love to gamble on football.
Yeah.
I mean, people love to gamble on sports, but football is the king of sports gambling in this country. And if you can get, Toledo and Bowling Green on a Tuesday night when there's nothing else happening and you understand the roles of these institutions, it's kind of like a feeder league. I mean, we don't roast Ohio State and USC and Michigan for not being NFL quality. We appreciate it for what it is, even though, it's a feeder league itself to the NFL. So, the quality may not be as good as big school SEC or Big Ten football, but man, there's still a lot of fun football to watch.
Yeah. I've been watching Savannah Bananas baseball highlights on TikTok. It's the most baseball I've watched in a long time. Yeah, because they're entertaining. It's weird. People like to be entertained.
Yeah, crazy thing, isn't it?
Right.
Which
is why it sucks that Marv is going to play for the Arizona Cardinals. They're like a Hilton Garden Inn ass franchise. There's just absolutely nothing interesting about them.
Not much, man.
God,
do you guys find yourself rooting for guys for teams a little bit because the Buckeyes you liked are on those teams?
Of course. Now Justin Fields is a Steeler. Great.
Let me put it another level. Was it hard to cheer against Stroud in the AFC playoffs last season?
Mm-mm.
No,
especially since he just destroyed the Browns, and just the way he doesn't even wind up. He just puts his arm up, his wrist flips, and then he hits a bullseye 40 yards downfield. It's beautiful. I can't believe we had him and won jack shit with him. It's infuriating.
Yeah, I mean, you put this past season's defense on a Stroud team, and they're natties. There's no doubt in my mind. If this 2023 Ohio State defense played on the opposite side of CJ Stroud, that's the national championship team.
They gave up 14 points a game. The Michigan game, they gave up a 7-yard drive, and then one just ball buster drive that Michigan earned its way all the way to the end zone.
Yeah.
Other than that, they didn't. They're going to be incredible this year. Not to segue into Ohio State football on an Ohio State podcast, but. Yeah, same thing again. They're going to be giving up single digits or teens in every damn game.
Got about another few more days to get through the portal and hope that someone doesn't have someone in their ear.
It's tampering season for sure.
Absolutely. And it's tough because a lot of these guys have friends or agents or other people that are like, hey, you're worth X. And they get on the open market and they hit the portal and they're not. They find out quickly they're not. So Ohio State's got to get through that. And I think they will largely unscathed. But man, what an exciting season ahead of us. Any other curse words in foreign languages we want to get into, or Gen Alpha clothing choices, or anything like that? Did we cover it all?
I think we're good. I'm psyched to see what Marv wears tonight because I know it's going to kick ass. He's going to have on a $700 pair of sunglasses too, which I'm like,
so a brand I've never heard of.
Right?
Yeah, I'm like, I have no idea what those are called.
Right.
I remember going to LA once and all these people were wearing Balenciagas out there. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
And this is like 5 years ago. And I was like, what are those? And then, oh, okay, that's why I don't know what those are, because they're $700 running shoes.
Yeah. Not to flex, but these are Costco cheaters. Like
There you go.
$15.
That's all you need, man. That's all you need to get to our age. Well, hey, man, we had a blast today on the Boomer Show, and we do appreciate you tuning in. As always, take care of each other. Be good to each other.